barbed wire, armed guards, the whole thing. I was way in over my head in terms of the threat we were under. Just as an international that is there working, you're exposing yourself to a heightened degree of threat. I'm afraid I don't have any secrets to it except to open your heart, to open your mind, and to look for those right people to work with. And what I found is the world opened back up to me.
You're listening to Wonderful Life with Tom Rohr. From Rogers to Bedford Falls, from Fayetteville to Pottersville, we're discovering how one person's life can have an effect on so many others. Our guest today is Ken Patterson. Ken works with individuals, organizations, schools, universities, government agencies, and foundations to create sustainable partnerships for increasing access to healthy food and improving healthy food choices. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
So our audience can get to know you a little bit better. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Great. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm from Joplin. I grew up there, came to undergraduate and law school here in Fayetteville, and loved it. After school, I left and started a career overseas, working for international development agencies, usually working in different crisis points, refugee situations, conflict zones. Fantastic opportunity as a young and single man, but was always anxious to get back home. I'm close to my family. I have two younger brothers, and I was raised by my dad. My mom passed away when we were younger, but we've always been incredibly close. And no matter how long I was gone, I felt tied. I felt tied to my family. I felt tied to the Razorbacks. I felt tied to wanting to be back in Fayetteville. I was lucky. I met a girl from Pennsylvania who was willing to move back with me to this area. We came back and we have just an awesome little girl, 3 years old. And my wife and I are 51, so the math was a miracle for us. We're just super happy. We're just trying to keep up with her and take our vitamins. But I'm super happy to be back. I think one of the greatest things about coming back for me was the development that I've seen in Fayetteville and the improvements that have been just made here. I loved it before, but we've got so much more now going on. People like you, people like some of the new businesses and some of the new entrepreneurs and some of the new initiatives that I've seen are just amazing. So I'm just really lucky to have come back to such a great town and to have an opportunity to serve here. I think the other greatest thing was that the friends that I had in undergrad and law school were still my friends when I came back 20 years later. And that's a real blessing. I don't think I can ever underestimate how crazy lucky that is. We remained close even after years of not having contact. Fortunately, a lot of them have moved back to this region because it's fantastic. And so I kind of was able to move back into a really nice group of people.
Yeah.
And that helps.
Now, Ken, you make reference to being gone for 20 years. I know you traveled around the world. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the places that you've been and things you did while you were there?
Great. I got my first opportunity in Croatia, which it was 1996, and it was right after the Yugoslavia war. Didn't really know what I was getting into, but it was given the opportunity by my long-term boss who really had faith in me, and I always will look back on that as the best opportunity ever. I went over and we started working with Bosnian refugees, and that led really to other opportunities to work with refugees in refugee camp settings. So from Croatia, was in Kosovo. I went to Albania for yet another conflict. Was able to spend a few years in South Asia, especially right after 9/11, in Afghanistan and Pakistan, working with returning refugees and some of the rebuilding projects that were happening there. Things like business startup for returning refugees, microfinance, and again, just helping people get back across the border and get settled again. That was a fantastic experience for me. After that, I spent a few years in Central Africa and West Africa before winding up with ICMC, which stands for International Catholic Migration Commission. Winded up with them in Geneva for 2 years, which was a nice, change, and very comfortable after spending some time out in developing countries. And since then, I've just been very fortunate to have been able to go back for a couple years at a time to Sub-Saharan Africa, Malawi, and I also spend a little bit of time in Haiti and Guatemala still now. I work as an advisor for a small international development agency based in Oklahoma that works in Guatemala and Haiti. So I still take a yearly trip with them, and it keeps one toe in the water for international development. But it was a great opportunity. I fell in with the right people. When young people today ask me, well, how did you get involved in that? I don't really know the answer, except that I was just super lucky and blessed. And I worked hard at it, and I worked hard to find those opportunities. But the secret was finding those groups of mentors that were taking me under their wing and helped me learn the ropes, helped me learn how to do that on my own, and let me learn how to try to be a mentor myself. So whenever I see a young person that's willing to even consider doing that kind of work, I do whatever I can. I'm afraid I don't have any secrets to it. I just accept that to open your heart, to open your mind, and to look for those right people to work with. And what I found is the world opened back up to me, a willingness to say yes and a willingness to try. I think the main lesson I learned right from the start, within 2 or 3 days of being in the Balkans, was, hey, I can only do what I can try to do. I'm not going to be the world shaker that maybe I was naively thinking at 21 that I was going to be, but I can do what I can do, and I can make a difference in a few people's lives, I hope.
To me, particularly in the Balkans, it sounds dangerous. Were you in danger while you were there?
We were. There were some very dangerous situations. A lot of that was very localized depending on who we were working with. The refugees we were working with were often under threat themselves. So, for example, in northern Albania, we worked with small minority groups that had been exiled really from Kosovo, and they weren't very far away from their enemies or the people that still wanted to do them harm. And as people protecting them, and that's the official term we use, we were protecting them, we were under threat ourselves. I think maybe the most, and general insecurity in West Africa or Afghanistan is always a threat. Just as an international that is there working, you're exposing yourself to a heightened degree of threat. We try to put what security we could in place, but with the full knowledge that can only go so far. I think the most dangerous situation that I was in Albania. We were able to start, and I'm super proud of this, probably more than anything I've ever done in my life. We were able to start an anti-trafficking program that really was the first of its kind in the Balkans. And as you know now, the Balkans are a real hot spot for sex trafficking. At the time, it was still a very untouched and unknown phenomenon. So we felt very proud of the role we were able to play to not only bring attention to the subject and to the problem, but to put real pressure on the government of Albania and other governments around there to react and to respond to help their own police and laws be enforced to protect those people when they're coming through. But in the meantime, as we were doing that, we had shelters. These were, they were really secure shelters, barbed wire, armed guards, the whole thing. I was way in over my head in terms of the threat we were under, but we had started that commitment. And maybe it was a good thing we didn't understand the nature of the threat when we started, or probably we never would have done it in the first place. The mafia and the guys that were selling these women were angry. They were really angry. We had basically stolen what they considered their property, their investment, and they wanted it back. And so it was a tough time. But fortunately, we made it through with a couple close calls, but here we are.
As an American, I'm sure you stood out. How did you handle that part of it, and also the language part of it?
Yeah, I think the main thing that I learned from the start that I think has made the difference between being able to do it and not is that I showed true openness, I think, to locals, and I developed real trust-based relations, even with the language barriers, or even though we look different. I tried to treat others with respect, and I found those people that were open to me, and I was able to always find a trusted group of local people. As there were several examples of trouble that was happening in different locations where my local network of friends and partners really saved my life and stepped in. And I would say, as an example, in Southern Africa, we were in a car that was in an accident. There were serious injuries out there on the road. Well, I was the only foreigner present. And it was an opportunity for someone to extort me, to someone to do me harm in order to win money back. It was a very tense situation. But I really had built up a very strong network of people that felt loyal, not just to me, but to what we were trying to do. And they knew I was loyal back to them, but I needed their help. And those guys stepped in, dealt with the police, dealt with the local gangs, dealt with the local security forces, were able to advocate directly to the government. And we came out of that okay. But that, in another instance, could have been a disaster, or even led to worse, the trauma. So that's an example, and unfortunately or fortunately, I've got a lot of those examples.
So now I know in your story here, somewhere you met your wife in Pennsylvania or from Pennsylvania. Did you meet her overseas, or did you meet her here?
We did. We met in Albania.
Okay.
And she was actually a professional competitor of mine. We were going, as international nonprofits, we were kind of going after some of the same donors and trying to coordinate. We call it coordination, but actually it's competition. But she was the director for Mercy Corps International, if you've heard of them, out of Portland. And I immediately thought, gosh, she's really impressive at what she's doing. And I was attracted to that. And first, of course, thought she was cute and nice. After some kind of cajoling and patience, we ended up being together there. It was fantastic. So after that, we ended up spending quite a bit of time apart, really, because she continued her career in different international groups, and as did I. But we stayed together through the years of being apart and getting together in different places. And finally, we made the decision. We're getting older. Our parents are getting older. We had a couple friends die, people getting divorced, all kinds of life happening back here in the U.S. And we both made the commitment to move back. And then, in a spectacular luck for me, she agreed to move back to this region, and she loves it here. Of course, you know, and I thought she would, and she does.
Yeah.
And she really considers this home. Yeah. So we still keep close contact with Pennsylvania, but I'm really fortunate that I am from a place that other people want to live too. So.
Well, and you are like so many other people that discover Arkansas or, have lived here, and, it's a great place to live.
That's right. That's right.
If there's a listener out there right now who is interested in doing something overseas, like you did, you talked about mentors. Who should they talk to?
If they can find someone, for example, here in Northwest Arkansas, that has had not maybe just one, but maybe one or two experiences overseas professionally, I think they can give a good insight into how they got started. My suggestion to them would be to hear stories like mine and to see which one fits your own life and what you can try. One of the biggest pieces of advice I got that was very helpful was to look through, and I asked those people to look through ads. Well, we didn't have the internet back then, but to look through those opportunities overseas in different places and what they need, the skills they need, what kind of person they need. And then if that's what you want to do, start working toward being that person or having those skills. As an example, I had come back to Fayetteville for about 6 months and was working for the university. This is before I started in Yugoslavia, and I was coordinating training classes for a foundation here in the Ozarks. I found an opportunity in Croatia to coordinate classes and training classes for refugees that were heading out of the country, either to Germany or to here or to Australia. But I found that I didn't think that skill was going to be applicable. But I searched and searched, and there it was. It was a job that matched what I had done, and but what helped me most was I had mentors at school, professors, guys that were older than me at the time, still are, I guess, that had done that. And I asked them just straight up, how did you do it? A lot of them had the same answers I did. They don't really know, but they just followed a pattern of being open and doing that. But my main advice would be a combination of asking those people you trust that you want to have a similar experience to, and then finding those sources and really doing the research on what the needs are. But what I found is that you can do anything and it can be applicable to international development. There's absolutely, if you are a librarian, there's a need for that overseas. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of finding it. And now we have a lot more resources at hand with the internet. So that's what I would suggest.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it'd be a great adventure and something that you'd look back at and be very proud of the work you did.
Oh, yes, I was. I was lucky to have the opportunity.
So, Ken, here you work for Feed Communities. Tell us a little bit about Feed Communities and what was your motivation to work here?
Great. Well, I've been here for 3 years, almost 3 years, as executive director. Feed Community started in 2012, right here in the same location. And the founders of Feed Communities, with Denise and Hershey Gardner, Amy Robinson, had seen that the food security response here in Northwest Arkansas was just starting, and what we had here in Northwest Arkansas was a series of these small projects, and they seemed to be going in all kinds of different directions. Feed Communities was founded in order just to serve as a gathering spot for those groups, to coordinate efforts, to coordinate programs, and to make sure that we used what resources there were in Northwest Arkansas that were addressing food security, how we could best work together. Now, since then, all those groups that were part of that conversation have developed, not because of feed communities, but because of being able to talk to each other and seeing what role each other could have. And now we have a nice, I think, healthy food security network of people like Seeds That Feed, Tricycle Farms, Apple Seeds, and I think we're a good part of that community too. We
So, Ken, let me interrupt you just a second. So, when you're talking about food security, can you elaborate on that a little bit? I think, a lot of people in Northwest Arkansas do very well, and they look around and the area is expanding and people are doing well. So, food security might be like a foreign concept. Can you talk about the reality of food security here in Northwest Arkansas?
I was very surprised, truthfully. Coming back is something that is an issue I had not really been focused on as a student before, or even as an adult. When I came back and I found that 1 out of every 5 kids in Northwest Arkansas was food insecure, the general definition of food insecurity is you don't know where your next meal is coming from, and it's just. That can take on different forms. It can be temporary, it can be long-term. It can mean that you might be not hungry, but not getting any good food, or, especially in the summertime, without school feeding or without school lunch programs available, or being at school, this can become acute. But you had asked, Tom, about my motivation for joining feed communities. When I came back and I saw these issues here in Northwest Arkansas, I was really surprised because, like you said, it's awesome here in terms of the economy and what we see around us, and it just seemed like the height of economic prosperity here that we all look around and enjoy. But when I saw the actual statistics and I began to see the actual depth of the problem, I wanted to be part of that process. And Feed Communities gave me the opportunity to work with a small team, which is what I like to do, to try to connect donor funding with initiatives and projects that can address our local food security challenges, and just really lucky to have a role where I can be creative and work with creative people on finding some of those solutions. We may not ever be able to crack the code on it, but we can find those local solutions that we hope will become sustainable, will go into our thinking as a region, to strengthen our food system. And by what I mean by local food system, it's kind of, I think, a bit of an awkward term, but I always look at the local food system as meaning what our local growers and local economy can do to address local food security challenges. And for feed communities, that secret, that component that is most important is our local farmer. We have a great agriculture history here. We have a great agriculture community. Not only are they good farmers, but they want to contribute to our food security challenges. They care about this. They care about this region. They care about the people here. Our job as feed communities is to help them find those opportunities to contribute. So one of the things we do, for example, is we aggregate food and produce from local farmers and retailers and distribute that. We distribute that to underserved pantries, meaning small pantries that usually don't have access to fresh produce. We were able to provide that to daycares, to Head Starts, to small churches that serve homeless people. We work closely with Seven Hills and Salvation Army and other people. And the end goal, the end objective, is to create those linkages and to help facilitate the transfer of that produce from the small farmer to the people that need it. That, to me, is the main definition of food security and helping our food system address food security that we can be part of. We have a staff here of 5. We are not a very large organization, but what we hope to do and what we feel confident we can do is to develop those linkages that can be real and become part of the community, can be replicated. So if we can accomplish that, we've done our job.
So your main focus, if I'm hearing this right, is you're supporting local producers. You're focused more on the local producers, and you want to promote access to healthy food where it's needed.
Right. And we support local producers by helping them by getting their produce and then giving them incentives, helping, we hope, we'll be able to develop linkages with special nutritional needs. So, for example, one of our major strategic goals for this year is to increase the linkages and the partnerships we have with senior citizen homes, with underserved daycare centers that are serving impoverished neighborhoods, even community groups that are in vulnerable neighborhoods, and finding a way to link the food to those groups, and then to find a way to subsidize those farmers, or to give the farmers at least some value for that extra produce, for their trouble, for the gas, for everything. As charities, quote unquote, we can't just always ask for give. We want to be able to make that an attractive partnership for the farmer. They are on a very small margin. That it's not that they have additional money to spend on harvesting and shipping and giving it. We got to make that as easy as possible, and if we can, to make that as incentivizing, if that's a word, as possible, or as economically beneficial to them as possible. We feel that we can do this by creating those linkages with health clinics, with those senior citizen homes, with daycares that are willing to provide some level of compensation for excellent produce that these farmers are growing, but at a price that they can also afford within their limited budget. We also aim to improve access to healthy produce by helping people grow their own. Besides having produce in their local pantries, we know that's not a sustainable answer. We need people to be able to grow their own food, and we have worked with 30 churches and schools in Springdale and Rogers and Fayetteville, working with these small congregations and groups of people that are tight, that are bound, that love working with each other, and they have committed to finding ways to grow their own produce for their congregations or for their families. And we're excited about the buy-in, or the involvement we've had. We provide community garden space, good soil, equipment, high-quality seeds, technical assistance with our experts here that can make sure that they have the best chance of success. We have regular trainings in beginning and advanced gardening. And this is, we feel, is the most important thing we do. It's empowering to train someone or to help someone understand how they can grow their own food. When I see somebody doing this successfully, being able to suddenly, within their same budget, have access to great food that they've grown, there's a real pride there that I think will motivate them to continue that work. It can get pretty hot and it can be hard and be discouraging. But what we have found is that most of the people we work with, after a year, after they get a couple of successes under their belt, they're ready to do it. And they do.
They get hooked.
Yeah.
And there's a learning curve these days, too, particularly with younger people and growing things. I know when I grew up, it was not uncommon for folks to have grown up on a farm. I don't think it's quite that same situation today. Is that a challenge for you?
It is. We don't have for a lot of the young people we work with, this is sometimes the first time they've, it seems like ever dug in the dirt, and this is all very new. So we find people that are new to gardening, that are ages of 7 all the way up to we have new gardeners that are 80 that have never thought about it. And a lot of those guys, adults, regret they didn't start earlier because they find it rewarding. They find it a good community activity, and they just find it very self-empowering that they can grow that and even share it with their neighbors or their grandkids or their friends.
Yeah. Well, so you're looking to link up with people within the community and evolve into a sustainable place where food is accessible to all.
That's right. So we're using our 2 locations. We have a location here in Fayetteville, downtown. We have a new location in downtown Springdale. And both those sites are going to have the same functions, very basic and straightforward functions. We're going to work with local farmers to bring their produce to one gathering spot. And we are going to target that distribution, meaning we're going to get that produce according to the special needs of each of the clients they serve. For example, for daycares in Springdale, we want to take that produce that they can incorporate into their lunch programs for ages 0 to 5. For a senior citizen home, we want to be able to provide that constant flow, reliable flow of local produce into their lunch or dinner programs or even their distribution programs for their clients to help people that don't have access to the produce, either because of income or because of transportation problems, that they have the access to it. At each location, we have a tool library where people can come. We work with the Fayetteville Public Library. We work with the Springdale Public Library. They can check out equipment like tillers, all the way down to things like hoes and shovels and rakes, anything they need to make their own garden. We also have space, especially for those needing gardening space that live in apartments or live in places with and we have our greenhouse. We have space where families can come and have a garden. As here outside, you see that we have 18 families that come here. Most of these are people living in nearby apartments or small houses, and they come here because it's good soil, it's irrigated, and it's a good chance to be with the community. They like sharing stories with each other, and people are always gathering out there and talking, and we love to see that. We have a seed library. We have training classes we have classes for gardening at each location. And these are the basic ways that we try to strengthen the food system.
Yeah. Now, you offer internships?
We do. We have between 3 and 5 interns a year.
Okay.
And that number is steadily increasing. Usually we have students or young professionals from 2 areas of work. We have social workers, which is very helpful for us when we have outreach efforts, meaning people who want, as a career, to develop relationships with local governments, with churches, with schools, and finding ways to work with them directly. The other discipline we look for is horticulture and agriculture. Young people that know how to garden, that can help other people garden, that can train, and that can help us make sure we have the most professional gardens possible and help people grow the best and cleanest produce they can. Those are our 2 areas that we look for. We have our internships. We try as much as possible to make sure that each of our interns has a good professional development opportunity. We put them in direct contact with our partners. We trust them to represent us at different events and at with different partners. And I think that our interns leave here feeling like it was a worthwhile endeavor that hopefully leads them to progress in their careers.
No, it sounds like that would be a great way to kind of cut your teeth in doing work like you do, or just
That's right.
being active within your community.
And this is going back to an original question, but you had asked earlier, Tom, about getting into international work or just in nonprofit work. That would be my that should have been my first piece of advice, is volunteer. Do somehow get engaged and show that you're committed to it. My wife, who has a much longer international career than I do, got her start by working in the Peace Corps. So I would say, if you can show that you've developed a skill that is specifically good for the community, you're set to do a lot of this kind of work, whether here or other places.
Yeah. It sounds very rewarding. So I know you have a variety of volunteer activities here. If a listener's interested in learning more, what's the best way for them to get involved, and what are some of the activities that you have?
Awesome. Well, we always need volunteers. And so I'd ask anyone who's interested, please contact me at Kate Patterson at feedcommunities.org, or you can call here to the office. But what we're looking for with volunteers, we're looking for people who are willing to do, divide this up into a few categories. One is representing feed communities at farmers markets and helping us with our outreach efforts and education efforts to the community. This means just being at the farmers market, which I think we all enjoy a lot. We have materials on childhood nutrition, on our programs here, helping people understand that they have access to tools and seeds here and to get the word out. If people are willing, they don't need to be garden experts. If they're willing just to get out and get their hands dirty, we always need volunteers to help us build gardens, to help us establish gardens. For example, if we have a school or a senior citizen home that we can help get started, then we always need those. We always need folks to go out, help us clean the lot, help us till the land, help us set it up for people. We also have a real need for any kind, always a need for IT services and people that are willing to be on call when we have trouble. Those are expensive services to pay for. And as we increase our communications, our data collection, creating databases that show the impact we're having and the metrics we're following, we always need additional help in setting up those programs and making them run efficiently. Finally, we always need people just to help us clean different places. And these are usually greenhouses, our own facilities, helping us deliver when we have a rush of produce that we're trying to get out. People that are on call and flexible are extremely valuable to us. Finally, anyone that is a trainer that feels like they can train in anything, in absolutely any gardening activity, we're excited to work with them. We've had people give trainings in beekeeping and birdhouse building. We think that all has a place in our food system. And so anyone that is willing and able to provide even small group training to people interested in learning and developing those skills, we welcome that.
Okay. Now, I know you're out in the public and you meet lots of folks. Could you share a couple stories, maybe some favorite moments that you had in your time here at Feed Communities?
I think one of the first things that comes to mind, we've had 2 annual, what we call harvest picnics out at the Springdale Community Garden, which we helped rehabilitate out with a grant from Walmart. Every year for the last 2 years, and we'll have another one this year, we've invited all the people, all the families that work in those gardens and to have a garden come out, and they bring their produce, some of their produce in the form of a dish. And we have music. We have just a real nice gathering of traditional dancing and other activities. And I find that is a real moment of celebration. I was super surprised, really, at the turnout. We must have had 80 people there that I didn't expect. Everyone brought their families. And it was a real moment, not only for people to celebrate what the work they had done, but for them to be engaged in the community. and they got to meet a lot of new people and develop those friendships. And I think some of those friendships are, of course, now continuing to develop. So those evenings out there were really special times. We've also been able to, I think, other special moments here have been when we have been able to create a direct linkage between a farmer's produce and someone who really needs that. A lot of what we do goes to those pantries and it goes to the groups, but we don't actually see the people it goes to. But sometimes we do. And we've had an example the other day. We had with a farmer, a local farm, we had excellent kale and chard and organic rosemary and all kinds of great stuff. We got a call from a woman who had severe cancer and was on very limited income and had received very strict instructions from her doctor about what she needed to eat to combat the effects of chemo. She got the referral from him to seek help from us. First of all, that made me really proud. And more importantly, it made me proud that she was able to come out and we were able to give her a package of those special nutritional goods. Since then, we have a package that we've been able to be more consistent on delivering to her. So each week she comes by, we have those products in there, and we hope that in some ways it's helping her deal with her illness and the treatment of her illness. Seeing that as an example, a direct example of maybe the impact we can have on someone's life is very rewarding.
Yeah, it's a wonderful life.
That's right. I'm super lucky to be here.
And you sound like Feed Community sounds like a learning organization where your eyes are open and you're looking out at the community, seeing what you can do, talking to people, connecting with them, but you have an overall plan to make the whole community stronger.
That's right. Our goal is partnership. Our goal is to find our role that can contribute and can best utilize the great activities and initiatives that are going on in this community by the other organizations that are working with food security, by agencies, by the university, by the business community. Our agenda is to find those roles that we can deliver on, and that most effectively utilize those partnerships and our friendships out there. That's the secret. We're not, as a community, we're only going to make progress by working together. And one of the greatest things about Southwest Arkansas, I think, is that people are open with each other. They they trust each other. And we're making tremendous progress because people are willing to do that. There's a sense of community here that I hope we don't start taking for granted. But just go to another one and see what it's like, and we appreciate what it's like here.
Well, it has a small town feel, and I think in small towns you look around and you take care of people.
That's right, and that's what it's all about. So we're looking forward to continuing our exploration process, and the most important thing we can do is to leave ourselves open to collaboration, be clear on what our mission is, but be ready to adjust to do what's best for people. I remember when I first started as a refugee camp manager, I was really nervous, and I was a young, new director, and the big boss from Geneva came down to visit. I was nervous because I didn't know what I was doing, and he knew that, and he was a nice guy. I remember him walking into the tent in this refugee camp, and he brought this really old lady who could barely walk in with him. And he said, and she couldn't speak a word of English, and he said, just remember, this is your boss. That's all you got to do is remember this person is your boss. And I sign the checks, but this is your boss. Gosh, that was the best professional advice I've ever gotten. And that's what I hope we can do here. We focus on our mission. Things will become clear as we go forward.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. So, Ken, we'll have all your contact information in our show notes.
Awesome.
If you would, I'd like to pivot to our lightning round.
All right.
I've got 3 random questions for you today. The first one. So growing up, what was your dream job?
I wanted to be a professional soccer player. And I really, it's great.
Were you pretty good?
I thought I was, but I had moved up to Joplin from Dallas. Soccer had just gotten started in Joplin, and as a whatever 4th grader, I'd already had like 3 years of experience, in-depth experience from 1st to 3rd grade. So I fancied myself pretty good. Of course, as time goes by, you start realizing, oh, I see, maybe not. But I always loved playing. I always got a charge out of being on the field. Still love kicking the ball. But yeah, probably I hustled a lot. Not very good though.
Okay, I like it. Second question, what's your favorite 90s music?
I loved grunge music. When that started all the way through, I can't help but first think of Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and those kind of bands from the 90s. And I went to a lot of those shows in the 90s. And so that was kind of, for me, that was a whole new music, and I thought it was something that was unique to us in the 90s. I mean, Dad had the Beatles, or the 70s had so many great bands, and I liked 80s music, but I was young. But as a young adult in the 90s, gosh, that was like our sound.
Yeah.
So I was pretty stoked about that.
And it probably still brings back
memories. I still listen to Pearl Jam. Oh yeah, all the time.
I love it. All right, last question. What would we find you doing away from here on your day off?
I have a pretty, I wouldn't call it boring. I love it, but I spend a lot of time when I'm away from the office working on a small cabin up in Oklahoma, hopefully with my family around. I'm not sure how much we're getting done, but we really like being up there together and doing those projects. Here in Fayetteville, I live downtown. I really enjoy taking our 3-year-old and my wife walking up to town and walking down Dixon, or walking around the square, going out to dinner. That's one of our favorite things to do. I think my alone time, the time that I try to carve out by myself, is jogging. And I love putting on some music and going for a run. Again, not very good at it, but it's important to me in terms of my time by myself. And I try to do that a few times a week.
Okay,
so
very good.
Not exciting stuff, but I love doing it.
It sounds like it gives you good balance in life.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Ken, listen, we appreciate your time today and a chance to talk to you and get to know you a little bit better. And, just so excited about what you're doing here at Feed Communities. It's very exciting to hear that we have that kind of support within the community.
Awesome, Tom. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, and I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, and thank you for tuning in to Wonderful Life. Remember, the only things that you can take with you is that which you give away. This is Tom Rohr, the richest man in town, signing off till next time.
This is the Padua Podcast Network. PaduaMedia.com.